Right, so good afternoon and welcome to the inaugural Portland Train and Lunch and Learn session. We're delighted that our first guest speaker is Alex Martin. Alex is a highly knowledgeable cyber professional with over 20 years experience in the sector. He's also a lead lecturer and mentors students and other professionals through their early careers in cybersecurity. This session will be approximately 1 hour of insights and then some questions at the end. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Alex.
Thanks, Sean, and thank you for having me as your inaugural. Appreciate it. So let me share my screen so we can get on with the presentation. You guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so yes, thanks everybody for joining. The talk today, hopefully, will give some insight into some of the upcoming technology, how it's going to benefit us, how it's going to integrate, how it's going to change our usage of technology, probably in the next 5 to 10 years, how it's going to be integrated into businesses, and will become the norm as far as usage goes, and technology bases that we will use. And then some of the maybe security concerns with regards to that, and how we can compensate for the security risks that are coming. But a brief intro, again, as Sean says, I'm a veteran, I suppose we can call ourselves now, of cybersecurity. Been in the industry for 20 plus years now. I've worked with cybersecurity solution providers, resellers, networking companies, IT support companies, MSSPs, and threat intelligence organizations over the years. I am the director and founder of Cyber Hogan. We provide cybersecurity services to clients, advisory and consultancy as well. I provide a lot of offensive security testing, I suppose is the word, along with pen testing, social engineering, red teaming, and then that threat intelligence piece as well. I'm an advocate of mentoring in the industry as well, and I have a brand of M Consulting that provides that for both students trying to gain a foothold into the industry and start their career, as well as professionals looking for the next step in their career and the next challenge. I'm also a lead lecturer for several training providers. I feel it's my obligation, having been in this industry for as long as I have been, to pass on the knowledge and experience to the next generation so that they can learn from that and not reinvent the wheel and have the same problems. And obviously I'm working with Portland as well to provide this service to you guys, hopefully. So this is an unexpected journey that I've been down over the last maybe 10, 15 years. And I want to take you on this journey as well, so you understand how the technology's evolved and what it is that we're basically talking about today. But this all started for me, and the catalyst behind this was going to the Future of Cyber event, which was held in Manchester. It's an annual event. I think they maybe run 2 a year, one up in the north in Manchester, one down in south in London. And what it's aimed at doing is providing insight and knowledge to professionals such as ourselves. Vendors can come in and show their products. Testers can come in and show the latest techniques for basically attacking a company and trying to get onto them. But it's all about the future of cyber. Now, I went to the Future of Cyber event in Manchester, which was, I think, in February or March last year. I went into one of the conference rooms and there was a pen tester up on stage, probably doing about an hour's worth of presentation. And they were talking about how they could use threat intelligence gathering, OSINT methodologies, to find a target within an organization, probably a CEO, somebody quite high up, target that individual with a phishing campaign, use a really strategic approach to that and compelling message within the attack email to get that individual to click a link or download some malware, have access to that device and compromise the security, and then have persistent access into a network. And after sat for 45 minutes listening to this pen tester going through this methodology, I was still scratching my head and thinking, well, what's this got to do with the future of cyber? How is this new and innovative? We've been doing this for the last 15, 20 years. So it wasn't the future of cyber, it was the current of cyber event that we were sat in, which perplexed me because there hasn't been very much talk about future technologies that's on the horizon, the threats that they're going to be bringing, and how it's going to affect us, both from a personal perspective and also a business perspective. So I'll take you guys back on a journey to probably 2010, 2011 for me. Google Glass project was released. Some of you may already be aware of this sort of project that Google undertook. Google Glass was supposed to be this next innovation in technology where you could have a headset rather than having your mobile phone. It was released in 2013, and at the time of release was at a cost of about £1,000 per set of glasses per headset. Unfortunately, the technology never took off, and development and sales of the product was suspended in 2023. So Google Glass, for me, again, was this next innovative leap in technology where we could have a wearable. It was going to overlay sort of virtual feed from Google Maps, for example, over the world that you were looking at so that you could follow a path. If you were using Google Maps, you could put in your destination and it would register where you were, your environment, and literally draw a line on the ground, which as you navigated through would, move accordingly. You could also use it for talking to people via Messenger, taking calls, and all those kind of good things that you have your mobile phone for. Like I say, unfortunately, the technology never really took off. It wasn't developed much with Google, and they have now suspended the Google Glass project entirely. It did, however, introduce the term to me of augmented reality. So we have obviously normal reality. Then we had virtual reality, which was obviously a made-up environment. But this, like I say, overlaid that virtual environment over the reality and therefore created augmented reality. It was probably another 5 years after Google Glass project was released that I then came across Microsoft HoloLens. Google Glass project was already probably on the back end of the development process, already probably going down that road of being closed off. Not much had been done with it, but I figured Microsoft taking this on board with all the hype that they put around it, all the development process that they put out behind it, I really thought Microsoft HoloLens was going to be the move. Now, HoloLens was released, version 1 was released in March 2016. Again, the original cost for this was £2,500, so not a cheap purchase. There was a version 2 released in 2019, and again, the cost for that was £2,800. Now, I highlight the cost of this, and you'll understand why shortly. But basically, both of these, both the first gen and second gen, ceased production in 2024, so last year. Again, with the augmented reality, my whole ethos behind this was that you could overlay and it would become more of an integrated part of everybody's work. You wouldn't necessarily need to have a desktop and a laptop, mobile phone, and all that kind of stuff. This was genuinely what I thought was going to be the next leap in technology. But like I say, again, Microsoft, I don't know if it was just down to costing, down to development, down to sheer interest from public, but it never really took off. As you can see from the images there, it was taken up by a lot of the technology developers in robotics. There was a big driver for the medical industry to take this on. Again, creating this augmented reality of being able to be in a room with several other colleagues, overlaying something like this where it's a medical operation that's going on without having to actually be intrusive and make some of the intrusive on the patient. You could start the process and figure out maybe where the problem lay, how the operation was going to work in a virtual environment pre-operation. Again, from a developer's perspective, the collaboration with other developers and other designers meant that you could work on a project together in this virtual instance, but feel like it was practically there. Again, these products are quite costly, and they haven't really gone as far as I would necessarily have hoped that they would have done at this stage. Just to mention, one of the other industries that was definitely involved with the likes of Microsoft HoloLens, and still to this day actually do use it. Bearing in mind that the product actually only went end of life or end of development and end of manufacture last year. One of the first organizations or bodies to kind of take this technology on board was the building trade. Again, for large construction companies who are developing skyscrapers in, some of the most urban areas that we can have, having an overlay of the design and layout of a building in a virtual environment that you can walk through has helped them develop the building further, make sure that structurally it's sound, but also when it comes to maybe maintenance, instead of having to take that costly exercise of finding a pipe, drilling holes to locate where the piping might be, they can overlay designs of a building and see whether that the pipe work was put in right from the start. Hopefully the builders have actually stayed true to the design and plan, and those pipe works are there. But this gives you, a really good, efficient way of finding that pipe work and avoiding costly accidents when sort of like drilling or knocking down one of the walls, for example. So it has, like I say, it has been utilized in industry so far, has been taken on board by the building trade. I definitely know of a couple of companies that I've worked with and discussed this technology with who are actively using it. So again, why Microsoft haven't really developed it any further and introduced it more for sort of public uses is quite complex, perplexing for me. Just to mention again, one of the other industries, military use. And usually once the military kind of get their hands on this kind of stuff, because of development funding and military funding, these products usually take off. So again, it leads me to question why Microsoft HoloLens has not been developed further in that sense. And I genuinely don't think it's because there isn't a market for it. There definitely is. We'll get to that shortly. Again, the military was an early adopter. Obviously, it helps not only from a strategic perspective whilst in a battlefield. Think of anything that you've probably played online, like Call of Duty, where there's the heads-up display. Having one of these headsets on board, as an individual, you can actually see activity around a corner from a drone, maybe, or help with strategic planning through virtual floor plans and mapping prior to an actual engagement. But basically, yeah, there's plenty of different usage for the technology. And again, I don't understand why Microsoft and Google haven't developed it further as yet. It may come up again. But I now want to introduce you to, bearing in mind that Google and Microsoft have kind of stepped off from these platforms, I want to introduce you to Apple Vision Pro. For me, this kind of rejuvenated my interest. Bearing in mind again that, like I say, the Google Glass project was back in 2013. Microsoft HoloLens was 2016. It's been quite a few years since this technology has really been talked about. So when I saw Apple Vision Pro being released last year, it really did, like I say, rejuvenate my interest and rekindled the theory that I was working to for the last sort of 10 years. It was released in the US in February 2024 and in the UK in July. But again, the cost was quite high, or is still quite high, and you are looking at £3,500 for this technology at this point in time. By the time it reached the UK for release, however, I say at £3,500, it's an Apple product. Most people are quite used to paying extortionate prices for Apple products, but £3,500 is still quite high. But like I said, there was a disparity of release dates between the US and the UK. And I definitely noticed that by the time it had hit the UK, a lot of creators on platforms like TikTok and other social media platforms had already sort of started integrating their videos into Apple Vision Pro, or was certainly using Apple Vision Pro as part of that process. How Apple Vision Pro was different from the likes of the Microsoft HoloLens was that you could utilize your environment a little bit easier. These headsets weren't as cumbersome, they weren't as large. The intuitive user interface was phenomenal in comparison to, like I say, Microsoft and Google previously, whereas Google was very much just an overlay of visual augmentation. This now provided all the applications that you'd expect from a mobile phone, for example, while still having visibility across the environment. The phrase that was used is pass-through technology. So, like I say, you're still seeing the environment that you're in and can walk around quite freely with the headset on, but have the technology at your fingertips. Like I say, from that virtual perspective as well, or augmented perspective. How this technology works. So for Apple Vision Pro specifically, and for the next one I'm going to introduce as well, but I'll keep that aside for 1 minute. There is obviously the complexities of the processors, proprietary information that Apple probably don't want to divulge too much. But basically, it's all about the cameras that are attached to the headset. You're not looking through it. You're looking at screens built into the headset, but the cameras on the outside allow you to see your environment and map your environment accordingly. Also, the technology has cameras on the inside that are mapping the movement of your eyes. And then again, a couple of more cameras facing downwards and outwards to make sure that it can capture your hand gestures. It uses finger gestures for clicking on stuff, so your hand and your eyes become the mouse. And like I say, it's very, very intuitive as far as an end user's usage goes. I had the advantage of seeing one of these in place at the DTX show in Manchester last year. I had my reservations with regards to the technology because of obviously it's new. Would it work as well as it says? Is it as intuitive as it says? Does it feel normal to wear it? And after 5-10 minutes of having it on, yeah, you get used to it pretty quickly. And it's fun as well. It's a bit different, you know. But like I say, having the ability to be able to see your environment and the people around you still, and interact with them whilst still having all of this virtual environment around you is a game changer. It's a lot different. As you have a look at this technology, you may see something like this as one of the images. Again, you're not looking through the actual lens itself. It's not a pair of ski goggles. So there's a bit of a misconception that you are looking through. That's what that pass-through is. Apple Vision Pro has a forward-facing screen as well. And with the cameras that are facing you and monitoring your eye movement and what have you, they can map your eyes and actually project a version of your face on the outside. So this is more for interacting with people whilst you've got these on, so it feels more natural for them that they're not just looking at you with some ski goggles on. So yeah, it's not like you're actually looking through. You've still got screens on the inside that you're looking at, very much like a standard virtual reality headset. But like I say, from your perspective, you've got the vision because of the cameras on the outside. Now, this is where the game, I suppose, really changes, or really changed for me. Meta had released their Meta Quest 3. It's a very similar platform to Apple Vision Pro in that it has the cameras, both forward-facing and downward-facing and outward-facing. Inward-facing as well, so that it can, again, map your eye movement and use that as the mouse. This was released this platform was released in October 2023. So this is just before Apple Vision Pro came out. I do remember in sort of like November, December of 2023, seeing a lot of television advertisements about MetaQuest 3 and how the augmented reality could help you learn playing the piano and stuff like that. You didn't have to have a piano. The keys would be in front and it mapped your finger movements. So you could, potentially learn the piano. This, like I say, was released in October, just before Christmas. Just before Christmas. At a cost of £469. Now, that cost at £469 was also in line with the likes of Xbox X Series, which was about £450 at the time, and PlayStation 5, which is about 480 quid. So again, at 470 quid for this headset, for this technology, it was within the realms of, I suppose, normal people like you and I being able to get a hold of it and play with it. So the price has basically been brought down to make it a little bit more accessible to everyone. You may be familiar with the setup. Meta had Oculus as a brand. Oculus was the sort of virtual reality version of this and has developed through to the MetaQuest 3, which is then this augmented reality, again, taking that virtual reality technology and overlaying it across the reality. Like I say, this is far more cost effective and more cost affordable for most people. And again, as we'll see as we go through the next few slides, Mark Zuckerberg was very clever with that because again, this was released around about Christmas 2023. So being that price and Christmas and new technology, I think he's definitely capitalized and made it more available. So MetaQuest 3 came out, like I say, in 2023. I think it was October 23. MetaQuest 3S, which is a lighter version, came out in October 2024. This was a lighter version, didn't have as much processor power and memory. But again, the price for this one was now £289. Again, released in October, just before Christmas. I can't help but think that that is definitely some clever marketing from the Meta team and Mark Zuckerberg. Because again, bringing the price down for this platform, if you couldn't afford MetaQuest 3, the full fat version, we now have the 3S, which is the light version. It's cheaper. Come on, you can afford this one. Jump on board. Again, at £289, it's probably cheaper than most mobile phones that you have out there and the technology that's mostly available at this point in time. So again, this makes the cost more affordable to most people. We push forward, and the question that I keep getting is, it'll never take off. This technology will never take off. Again, we looked at Google Glass project, we've looked at Microsoft HoloLens, and the argument is having something on your head is never going to take off. Having something on your face like this, like I say, like a ski mask, it's not aesthetically pleasing. The cost. I mean, when we start looking at MetaQuest 3S, it's now coming down in price, but looking at Apple Vision Pro, the cost is definitely prohibitive to most people. And this technology's, taken on board by kids because it's mainly sort of advertised as a gaming platform more than a business adult platform, if you like. So the argument is always, it's never going to take off. It's never going to take off. But as I've explained in the last few slides, Meta have changed that game. The cost for MetaQuest 3 and 3S has definitely made it more accessible for the average person. They're advertising the platform not only from a gaming perspective, but also as a learning platform and as a business platform. Like I say, the advertising in November, December 2023 was very heavily orientated around it being a learning platform. Again, you could learn the piano if you liked. It's been advertised as a more versatile platform, shall we say. It's not just aimed at kids anymore. So the argument still stands, though, that, well, it looks like a ski mask. Who's realistically going to wear this for hours at a time, if necessary, from a business perspective, if you like, or professional perspective. And so at this point, I just also want to introduce you to a collaboration between Meta and Ray-Ban. And this is where the thought process then kind of goes. Now, this isn't an augmented reality headset, unlike, like I say, the Meta Quest 3 and the Apple Vision Pro, but it has got technology built into it. There is a camera for taking video, and there are speakers built in for sound, so you can attach to it via Bluetooth. But it's not a massive leap to think that as technology moves on, potentially Ray-Ban and Meta could collaborate and create a more lightweight version of Meta Quest 3 that looks more like a set of glasses. Again, the first generation of Ray-Ban and Meta glasses came out in 2021. They have now, I think, got third gen out there. Again, this is to say this is a device. It's just another device for recording events around you and for listening to sound through Bluetooth. However, I now want to introduce Meta Connect 2024, or Meta Connect just in general. Meta Connect is the annual conference that Mark Zuckerberg holds, and basically discusses the technology, innovation, and industry trends that Meta are sort of following and have noticed over the last sort of 12 months. And they also unveil new products, features, and applications that they're developing that are currently in the works. So this this event is typically held in September of each year. September last year, Mark Zuckerberg came on stage and basically validated all of my thoughts that I've been having for the last 10 years. Within the first 5 minutes, and feel free to go and have a look. It's on YouTube as the recording for Meta Connect 2024. But within the first 5 minutes of Mark Zuckerberg coming on and obviously introducing himself and thanking the team for their good work that they've done over the last year, etc., the statement he made that blew me away was that basically handheld devices, this was his words alone, handheld devices will be redundant within the next 5 years, and that wearable technology is the future. The ability to consolidate your devices and what have you like that, and have them as a wearable technology is the way that the industry is looking to potentially move. How much more can we actually realistically do with a mobile phone? It's not a phone anymore. It's definitely a computer in your pocket. So this, for me, feels right as the next evolution in that technology drive, if you like. And like I say, after having been on this journey myself for the best part of the last 10 years or so, and jumping up and down and being on the soapbox for particularly the last year about the subject matter, it definitely validated my theory behind it and gave me the opportunity to get back up on my soapbox and tell everybody, I told you so. It wasn't like I hadn't warned you. So this technology has definitely been adopted. What Mark Zuckerberg then went on to do was introduce Meta's Project Orion. Now this is still in development. I think they're talking about a release date back end of this year, maybe early next. But as you can see, they are already considering the fact that you're not necessarily going to wear a ski goggle type device, and that they need to make it more streamlined, more aesthetically pleasing. And yes, okay, these are still thick rimmed glasses, and even the good looking models struggling with making these things look good. But it means that you should be able to put them on and remove them quite easily. They don't look that bad. But again, as technology moves forward, processors get smaller, chipsets get smaller, and technology advances. This technology again and these wearables are going to become more streamlined and look more like normal glasses, if you like. They're basically looking again. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta are looking to develop the project and improve the aesthetics using the augmented reality and AI integration as well. So again, these will become more intuitive using AI, where the product, you'll be able to talk to it and it will understand the instructions that you give it, rather than using finger gestures and hand gestures, and integrate again more with AI and with our everyday lives. Again, they're not pretty at this stage, but if we look back at what Ray-Ban are doing with Meta and that collaboration, you can quite easily see where this journey is going to go. And just fancifully, again, who's to know at this point? But potentially, this could be the next evolution in it as well. Again, as chipsets get smaller, as technology moves on, AI has only been released a few years ago, and look how that's sort of integrated into our lives already. That's realistic to think that possibly there could be just a simple contact lens that we put in the future that gives us all that visible augmentation of reality in a much smaller device that you wouldn't necessarily see somebody wearing. Now, there are some benefits. Let's start with benefits to this type of technology. Like I said before, we can consolidate all the existing technology bases that we're using onto the single platform. Because it's augmented reality, you can create screens. You can integrate your usual mobile phone usage, such as social media platforms, taking a picture, contact lists, and making phone calls through the headset. Again, making multiple screens for computational requirements. You could have gaming, you could have work-related, whatever the requirement is. And again, you can also have television screens, any other screen that you're using in your life. You can have now consolidated through a single device, which from let's have a look, let's have a think about this realistically. We're in a cost of living crisis at the moment. And again, if we can consolidate on our technology, it's going to save us some pennies along the way. Again, from a personal perspective, we can be more dynamic with our workplace layout. And although we may be using the same space, we can make it feel a little bit different, shall we say, depending on if we're using it for personal space or for workspace. And you'll be able to switch and make it feel a bit more creative, if you like. Again, coming back to the thought process I had when the Microsoft HoloLens piece came out, I saw people potentially, and this was me thinking forward, I saw people coming into a workplace having that device on their desk and nothing else. Once you put it on, you immersed into this augmented reality with, like I say, virtual reality overlaid. And instead of having a desk PC or a laptop, somebody would literally throw you a brick across the room that you could virtually catch, and that would be your desktop potentially, or your emails, or whatever the case was. And you could click on those boxes and it would open up. Again, you could set this up in any way you wanted, so you can have multiple screens behind you, screens next to you, above you, wherever you need them to be. But you can change this layout to be more personal for yourself and make it suit you as you need it to. And again, hardware costs. If you needed multiple screens to your work or your job, you could have that up and then remove them when not necessary. So you might need 2 or 3 screens for a project at some point, but only one for a project later down the line, rather than having that hardware set around just collecting dust, which is costly because that stuff diminishes in value over time. You could just simply load up a new screen and delete it when done. There's no extra cost for that hardware then. Quite efficient. There was a user, I don't think I've actually got a slide on this one. There was a user, and again, this was in the early days, early part of last year. I was looking at some of the reviews of the Apple Vision Pro. And again, from a usability perspective, this user had actually reviewed this whilst on a plane flight. They usually had 3 separate screens up to do their work as they worked through emails, developed websites, and had the social media. And again, because this is a virtual environment, and you can particularly with the Apple Vision Pro, you can dial up and down how much and how immersed you are in the virtual environment. But you could dial that up and therefore still have your three screens around you on an airplane, which we know is usually a quite confined space. You'd still have that depth that your screen was that far away from you, but you're in that virtual environment. And obviously that depth is virtual again. Once you've dialed into it, it doesn't matter how close that seat is in front of you, you're seeing the screen at the set distance that you've put it. So this again opens up the ability to work on the fly a little bit more, work on the move. You know, there's a lot of us that do commute around on trains and planes, and sometimes having a secondary screen is necessary. Again, this opens that opportunity to have more screens and more flexibility in your working environment as you move around. From a personal perspective, again, you know, who doesn't want to watch TV on a 40-foot screen, cinema style, in your living room? You know, you can get rid of your normal TV, you can get rid of your Alexas and stuff like that, and this becomes maybe just the, like I say, default product. From a data and communications perspective, data's at your fingertips, literally at your fingertips. Notifications or feeds and prompts are there when you see them, and it allows a more immersive experience for people online. You will be able to create your own personal avatars, which potentially means that the open visual bias that we might have might diminish over time as well. You'll be able to create these avatars as cartoonishly or animated, or as realistic as you like. Again, maybe representing your personal identity a little bit better. The platform as well, again, has the inward facing cameras, so you would be able to scan your face, make these make the creation of these avatars a lot easier. Obviously, with that inward facing facial scanning and recognition, that allows you to have these avatars talk and move, utilizing the likes of deep fake technologies and stuff like it to make your avatar move like you would online in the environment that you're moving into. Again, thinking more like social environments where you need to have a representative of yourself in a chat room or a coffee shop in that virtual environment. But it makes it feel a little bit more natural, if you like. From a social benefit perspective, I think when we kind of look back at the pandemic, and some of the next generation individuals that we have coming through, you know, the younger generations, there's a lot of social anxiety that has been built up over the years. People do suffer from this quite a lot, and it has been a hindrance for a lot of people getting into social environments, meeting new people, etc., etc. This platform enables you to have that social experience of technically going out and meeting new people, but still being in the safety of your own house and your own environment. You know, again, having these avatars to make these experiences in social environments and coffee shops, I'm going to use as the example, but virtual versions of the coffee shops. Having the avatar there makes it feel a little bit more normal. Again, as social creatures, we like to interact with people. Teams has been great for being able to do that as a platform, but it's still looking at a screen rather than interacting with a person. And again, interacting with people is more what we're used to as a species. So again, this from a social benefit perspective will help people interact better, integrate with people better, and socialize better, I believe. Now, this does come with a slight caveat in that we do need to just be slightly wary of some of the mental health implications that this might have. One of the individuals, one of the users who was reviewing the Apple Vision Pro early on last year, I watched some of his stuff on YouTube, again, being interested in this technology, and one of the statements he made really rung a bell with me and really hit a chord. From a mental health perspective, I've been quite an advocate of mental health over the last couple of years, and what this guy said was quite worrying, in the sense that putting this technology on, and then being immersed in this augmented reality does feel a little bit strange to start with, but they've been developed in such a way that it becomes comfortable very quickly. And again, having played around with one of these platforms at DTX myself last year, I can attest to that. 5-10 minutes, and you've got the controls down, and you're kind of navigating things very easily. The problem, he said, however, was taking the technology off. Once you'd had the access to data at your fingertips, the platforms that you could do, and creating multiple feeds of information, he said coming back to reality felt a bit weird, or felt worse than putting the technology on. Again, let's face it, reality that we live in is pretty boring and mundane at the most times. Again, you've not got sensory bombardment of technology and notifications and information. We've got to go out and actually actively search it on a device, or on a Google page or whatever. So he said that the concern he had was that people could become too immersed, not want to remove these devices, potentially leading to some kind of dependency or addiction, if you like. Certainly sensory overload, with people having too much information sent to them at any given time, is definitely not going to be good for anybody's mental health, and potentially a disconnect or disassociation with actual reality, preferring to be more immersed in a virtual or augmented reality, because it provides that extra information constantly. So there is a fear that this is definitely going to impact mental health somewhat. But as with everything, we have to weigh up the pros and cons. So I've talked about this quite a bit from a personal perspective, but there is definitely going to be a business benefit that's also going to drive this product forward. Now, I mentioned previously that obviously it's been launched primarily as sort of gaming platforms and for the younger generations, etc., etc. But that's exactly how most of the mainstream technologies of today were originally launched. A lot of us, myself included, are what they call a technology migrant. So we didn't have mobile phones when we first, when we were kids. These things have been developed and released, and we've got used to using them, and we use them now in our day to day. Look at Microsoft. Microsoft Office platform. Bill Gates launched that to students for free, and when they went into the workplace, they then expected to have that platform for them to use. So it's, for me, I would have said, quite a realistic path that the next generation, if they use these virtual reality or augmented reality platforms more readily, they're going to expect to be able to use them in the workplace as well going forward. Again, there is the cost benefit in cost reduction for businesses. Single platform, again, being able to get rid of mobile devices, mobile laptops, desktops, multiple screens. This allows you to use multiple screens in that virtual environment and open up, as you see fit, the number of screens you need. Again, I'm coming from a cyber perspective, thinking about sort of like the security operations centers, the SOCs of the world, where you need several screens looking at and analyzing several clients' data at the same time. This will reduce that hardware cost, if nothing else. It'll also reduce software licensing. You've got a single product, not having to license multiple different platforms. And I suppose at this point, we also talk about the collaborations and efficiencies in productivity. Single platform, data at the hands. Users will be able to be more efficient, or staff members will be able to be more efficient with the projects that they're working on, because that data's directly to hand. Thinking again back to sort of like the building trade, not having to follow the process of drilling walls to find the pipes means that process can be bypassed potentially, and makes it more efficient, meaning that staff now have more time to work on other projects, and do more with those more efficiently. From a collaboration perspective, globally, because the virtual environments make it feel like you're collaborating with somebody in the building, literally, We'll be able to pull talent from a global market rather than just looking at potentially restricted local market spaces. But it's at this point I do want to touch on cybersecurity as well. There is potentially, because of the reduction in the number of devices, also a reduction in the threat landscape that a malicious hacker or a malicious threat actor may be able to utilize, reducing that scope and potentially risk to a business from a breach. You've only got the one device that you need to update and secure and run with and manage, rather than several devices across the estate. Again, it would make it easier to roll out patches, track company assets, and just in general improves the monitoring and alerting across the estate. Again, because you're only having to do it with a single device for each user rather than multiple devices. Collaboration and productivity, I've kind of already touched on this one. Because it's immersive and you can host meetings in these virtual arenas, it means that we can take advantage more so of that global talent pool that we have out there. Global teams can maintain how projects are progressing through virtual meetings. And like I say, just being able to reach out and access more skilled people from a global talent pool is definitely going to be more beneficial for most businesses. But again, I come back to cybersecurity. Because this is new technology, and this is my fear, because this is new technology, there's not a lot of focus being made on how these products and how these platforms are potentially going to be integrated into business, and also how that will affect businesses from a potential risk perspective that may result from an attack of some kind. These technologies, like I say, Mark Zuckerberg's already confirmed it. You know, in the next 5 years, your mobile phone and handheld device will be redundant. Most people are going to be using wearables, and that will then be integrated into most businesses because people expect it, probably in the next 5 or 10 years. So it's at this point now that we really need to start thinking, again, because most of the time cybersecurity is reactive rather than proactive. It would be good for us to now start thinking about how these wearable technologies are going to impact us as a business, if you like. I think that the easiest way will be very similar to what we see now under the BYOD, or bring your own device policies that we have in organizations. So most of these wearables are probably going to be owned by the individual, but be utilized to do work with the business as well. So you bring it in as your own personal device. There would be the typical sort of like mobile device management platforms, which would give you access to the data you required from a privilege access requirement perspective within an organization, but also reciprocally or reversely give a company the ability to monitor your device to make sure it's up to date and secure. Certainly, the other cybersecurity concern, both from a business perspective and from a personal perspective, these devices are going to be taking a lot more information about you and putting it out on the internet. Whether that's, like I say, Apple's data centers or Microsoft or whoever's, there's going to be a lot more information about you out there, a lot more analytics, behavioral based information, shopping trends, whatever. There's going to be a lot more information provided and stored out there on you, which again is going to be heavily targeted by threat actors. Personal identifiable information, personal ID, identity theft, employee identity theft, financial fraud, company sensitive information. Again, if we're going to integrate these into business, we've got to consider how potentially it affects or how easy these things can be leveraged to have a data breach of some kind. Proprietary information, source coding, trade secrets, those kind of things. Again, because these are potentially going to be a platform that everybody's going to be using, they will be an attack vector. it will be potentially something that malicious threat actors will target and focus on. We've already seen as well the use of AI and deepfake attacks in the last year. In the last year, primarily, we saw the inaugural deepfake attack where the financial officer in China was instructed by his CFO to make a transactional transfer of 25 million, I think it was, dollars. Not small change, but the whole conversation that financial officer had was with a deepfake version of his boss. Now, again, if we're augmenting reality, of which you may have FaceTime and other social media and other platforms for communication, how is it that we can tell that the person that you're talking to is not a deepfake? Again, the malicious threat actors will use every technique that they possibly can to try and defraud you potentially, or get information out of you. The other thing that these platforms, or the other concern that I have, is that these platforms may have a heavy reliance on QR codes. QR codes haven't been massively used in the last sort of 10, 15 years that they've been around, but there has been an increase in their usage. Most of the time, if you go, if anybody frequents McDonald's, at the end of the table, you can use their QR code to get on the app and order your food. There's also been QR codes used in car parks to be able to pay for your parking. The car parking one particularly, I know, has definitely been targeted by malicious threat actors by putting a fake QR code on. Those QR codes are not easily read by humans. There's no URL that you can follow, and it's not until you've clicked on it that it takes you to the destination. Again, with QR codes maybe being used by these platforms a little bit more heavily, the likelihood is that potentially that QR code could be malicious and redirect you somewhere that the threat actor wants you to go rather than where you intended to go. So there's all these kind of things to really, really worry about. I suppose worry is not the word I want to use, but be concerned about and need to consider for future-proofing with this technology in mind.
10% gold.
Lastly, I just want to touch again from a cybersecurity perspective that although these products, these platforms are still fairly new, they are being widely used, I suppose. MetaQuest 3 has been out for a little while now. I certainly personally know of a fair few people that have it and use it. Malware has already been created. So these guys, again, one of the things that I said before is that the cybersecurity industry is always reactive rather than proactive. And unfortunately, like I say, University of Chicago have already created malware called Inception. What this does is it takes the home screen of the virtual environment and creates a direct clone of it. This is done by downloading some malicious software, some malware infected application. And like I say, then it clones the home screen. At that point, every interaction you have with what you consider your home screen is recorded and transacted as a keylogger. So if you're going on your online banking, they'll know what all your details are. Not only that, but they are going to, they will integrate with generative AI and deepfake technologies, meaning that if you message one of your contacts, the actual recipient message might be different to what you generate, but your home screen is going to tell you that that's what you sent. They could also manipulate your account to send further messages to individuals from a financial fraud perspective, as you requesting help for, I don't know, needing a taxi. Can you send me some money? It's very concerning that this is already sort of being developed. I haven't seen as yet feedback from sort of the antivirus and anti-malware industry as to how they would potentially sort of cope with something like this. My concern again with this being Inception is, and it's sort of cloning your home screen. If anybody's seen the film Inception, the sort of backstory behind it, or the idea behind it, is a dream within a dream. Well, how many clone screens do you have to go back through before you get to your home screen? And how would you tell? Again, that's the concern that I think the antivirus and anti-malware industry is going to have to step up to. It's definitely going to become a problem, but we'll leave it with them. And lastly, I suppose, just to leave it on a lighter note, because that was quite heavy, talking about malware and all the malicious stuff that could happen. This has already been predicted by The Simpsons. And in The Simpsons, we trust. Back in 2016, The Simpsons released this episode. So, like everything else, they're already predictive about this technology. And The Simpsons are still running. So hopefully we should still have some longevity left. Interestingly enough, just wanted to highlight, again, Hollywood's predicted this kind of technology for years. We're just kind of catching up with it. Back to the Future had it, wearables in it. There's been numerous other ones. Lawnmower Man might be another one you guys know. But Ready Player One, which I think came out 2018, it was. Okay, it was more virtual reality than augmented reality, but the headsets that they wore looked very, very, very similar to Apple Vision Pro. So maybe we're just at the cusp of this new technology being available to us and kind of catching up with Hollywood, realistically. I think, again, there's a massive, massive benefit to us moving to this new technology. I think that we are definitely going to go on that trajectory, so we need to just be prepared for it and embrace it. For me, certainly, having been a sort of technology migrant, moving from not having mobile devices and laptops and computing to then having it in my life, I can definitely see that this is the next evolutionary step. And personally, I'm ready to embrace it myself. And on that note, we are kind of at the end of the slide decks and the show and the presentation. So I would quite happily open up to anybody who's got any questions, if there are any.
Thanks, Alex. I think those glasses that the model was trying to pull off look shockingly similar to my very first pair of glasses.
Yeah, definitely prescription grade.
I think it was really interesting, the fact that businesses could stop using so many devices such as desktop PCs, laptops, tablets, mobile phones, and replicate that same kind of assets through a single device. I think it's really interesting.
I mean, again, businesses are always looking at cost reduction ways and means. And I think, one of the biggest costs that we always have is the people, which they always tend to try and get rid of first. But if we can reduce the costs on hardware, as we have done over the years, again, with virtualization and cloud migrations and things like that, this genuinely feels like maybe that next step. There's definitely huge benefits to businesses, huge benefits.
Absolutely. If you think about the Apple devices in particular, you think about the cost of a MacBook, the cost of an iPad, an iPhone, it's soon going to mount up. And if that can be condensed into a single device, it's excellent.
Yeah. I mean, again, maybe that's not something I kind of had considered. Whatever the cost of the iPad, the iPhone, and whatever other devices you might have, does that equate to the $3,500 that's kind of against this device currently? That would make sense. Again, from a personal perspective, massive cost reductions from being able to consolidate onto a single device if it's not Apple. Like the Meta Quest 3, the cost that they have it down at now, £500 for the full version. That's a lot cheaper than probably most mobile phones out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If mobile phones can be redundant, as you say, in potentially the next 5 years, people that are on a 3-year contract now on a Google device or an Android device or an Apple device, they may think, I'll just put that money aside, and when that contract's up, I'll buy myself, a Meta device.
Yeah, and again, like I said, mobile phone manufacturers and operators are always looking at putting new features on, new functionalities. The next version of the iPhone is always the best version of the iPhone because it does X, Y, and Z. But how many more iterations and more functionality can we have from a device that's in your hand? I think they're definitely going to move to a newer platform because it will add more functionality and give more or give them the ability to develop more features.
Great stuff. Any other questions at all? Cool. And that note then, so thanks everyone for getting up your lunch today. Thanks, Alex, for the presentation. It was really interesting. If anybody would like any more additional information on how IT skills certifications, short courses, CPD can support business and personal growth, then please visit portlandtraining.co.uk. And thanks and have a great weekend.